Hi everyone, if you clicked on this video, thank you for checking it out. I'll be going over this in person as well, but I'd like to have this documented for future use as well. Right now it is November 27th. I sent a Google form a day or two ago just to get some input on which position folks wanted to play for the Winter 2025 Intermediate League. I received feedback from about 7 out of 10 members of our team so far, and the preferences generally align with my expectations, which is great. And so I created this freeform doc as a way to explain and demonstrate my ideas for Sacramento Smash team's rotations. I was planning on sending a few screenshots over text, but this got so involved that I think it warrants a vocal explanation. And for the players that have not filled out the form yet, if you don't mind, I'm just simply going to fill in roles for you for demonstration purposes. So first things first, we're going to review volleyball zones very quickly, just for folks that have not gone over this in a while or forget or just have never learned. So we start with zone here on the bottom right here, and then we just move counterclockwise to zone 3, zone 4, 5, and ending at 6 in the middle back here. So when I refer to these zones, that's kind of what I'm talking about right here. So here is our example lineup on the left. What's different about this lineup compared to others is that we'll have what I have dubbed primary roles, which are positions that you'll be playing most often, and secondary roles, which are positions that you'll be using as a backup. And so the intended goal of this strategy is to ensure that we always have at least one setter in the front row. And we could have had setters in the back try to run up front like other rotations have, but I want to stay away from that for now for reasons that I'll go over later. This will be beneficial for a few other reasons. The most obvious is that it will allow us to fill roles in the event that some of our teammates are unable to make a game. So say both myself and Michael are not able to make a certain game, then we'll have Taylor and also 3 other players who are available to fill. Another advantage of using secondary roles is that it gives our players experience in more than just one domain, unfortunately at the expense of mastery in one specific area. I think we'll eventually want to move to solo positions, but since we're pretty new and intermediate, I figured it'd be a beneficial use of each of our time to try out more than one position, while not having to spread our training time too thinly. The last advantage is that it allows us to deal with having more than 6 players on the court with variable attendance from a logical perspective. So if you have any set of players in a 4-tier rotation that isn't divisible by 3, you're eventually going to end up in a position where you have an odd set of players up in the front. And so, like I mentioned earlier, you could have, say, a setter from the back move up to the front, should you need, as we've seen in other rotations. But that has the potential to cause some visual and mental confusion when they cross over, for example. So if Gabby were to move over here, that can cause some confusion. If we go through with the strategy, I honestly don't foresee this lineup changing too much for now, unless we really see some serious issues. So without further ado, I'm just going to go over this really quick. So we have Carlene, Evie, Jen, and Gabby as setters primarily. And setters will be setting from zone 2 to the right. It'll be right over here to the right of our middle blocker and also our outside hitter. Your secondary position will be outside hitter. And this will make more sense later. For Cami, Gabe, and Matt, you will be our outside hitters. You'll hit and block from zone 4, and your secondary position will be the middle blocker, work in this area, and you'll switch to that when appropriate. And then that leaves myself, Michael, and Taylor. We will primarily be the middle blockers, and then switching to setters as required. These will be our secondary positions. So primary right here, setters here, outside hitters here, middle blockers here, and then secondary outside hitters will be these 4. These 3 will be secondary middles, and then these last 3 will be secondary setters. So here's an example starting rotation. Nothing fancy here. Outside will start in zone 2, middle starts in zone 3, and setter starts in zone 4. So it's easy to visualize when you only have these 6 players here, like this. But once you get to 7, 8, or 10 players, things get a little bit funky. And so you can see it coming up ahead in the lineup right over here, where you have 2 setters pretty close to each other. But we're not going to worry about that for now. Right now, we're just going to go over the just general 4-2 rotation. If you're already familiar with 4-2, you can probably skip this section, but I'll be going over this just to make sure we're all on the same page here. So on receive, we'll select the front row such that the setter's position is closest to their base position. Again, over in zone 2 to the right here. Setters will also start closest to the net, followed by outside hitter, and then middle blocker. They will start off furthest from the net. This is to ensure that we don't cross pads unnecessarily or end up hurting each other, basically. Back row will pass and take lanes, each being responsible for about 1/3 of the court. Since their position doesn't matter in this rotation, I'm just graying them out. As a note, just because you're not back row does not mean you won't be receiving. If a very short serve comes up over the net, I think our front row should likely handle that. None of us are Olympic athletes here, so I don't think like myself or Gabby, maybe Gabe could, but myself or Gabby probably can't just run up right over here if we get like a really short serve. So just be prepared for that if a really short serve comes up or one that hits the net comes up. Immediately after receiving the serve, all players will move to their base positions. Assuming that a normal serve is received and Gabby, Gabe, or I pass the ball correctly to the setter will move from this position over to zone 2. Middle blocker will move back a little bit, and then outside hitter will move way over to the end of the court here. It's a long way there, so just be prepared for that as the outside in this rotation. At this point, back row will be doing things a little bit differently than we've done in beginner leagues. So players in zones 1 and 5, which are Gabby and Gabe here, you will be scooting a little bit up and also a little bit outward as well. Whereas zone 6, which is myself in this case, will be moving a little bit back to prepare for deep hits. Ideally, you probably end up actually with 1 foot on the 10-foot line when we're about to receive the ball back, when the ball is being returned to us. But we're just going to place it right here for now. So as an overview, here's where players will start. Setter up front, outside hitter a little bit behind them, and then middle blocker closest to the line. And then we have us 3 in the back row receiving in lanes. And then here's where we're moving forward after receiving. So let's just say the ball comes over to me. I pass it over to Jen. Gabby and Gabe will move up. I'll move back. And then everyone else moves to their base position so that the setter, Jen, can choose whether or not she sets to Michael as a middle blocker or Cammy as an outside hitter. So on serve, blockers will take priority, starting close to their base position, as they will need to get to their position first. Back row should already be in the post-receive position where zones 5 and 6 are already there, and then of course whoever is serving from the back row here. In this case it's Gabby. She'll serve, and then she'll need to move up to her position to prepare for the return. I found a diagram online that explains this rotation as well. We can just refer to this if we need. Here's where we'd be ready to receive the ball. Ball's in their court, they're about to attack us. So here's where we start at. Then we read where they're going. So if they're setting to the right, in this case, middle blocker will move to the right towards the setter. Outside hitter will move a little bit back towards the line, 10-foot line. Zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will close in. Zone 6 will stay in the back. And then zone 1 also tends to close in too, depending on where they think that the attack is going to go. Here's how we would adjust. So this hitter's over here. Blockers should be able to generally cover this conical area here. And then we should also be able to just understand generally where the ball's trajectory might be. In an emergency, here's where we'd be going. So moving just generally outward. Emergency is not really the best term, I think. I think it's really more of like, okay, say the ball gets one touch and then we have to catch it. That's kind of the expectation of where each of us would go here. General rule of thumb, though, is that we start a little bit outward, actually, and then move in. It's easier to move in than to move out. Okay, so what do we do when we have 2 setters in the front? In the example rotation I gave earlier, we'll be running into this scenario after about 5 rotations. Both Evie and Gabby are primarily setters in this situation. So how do we determine who's the setter? What will the second setter do? And then who the heck is playing middle here? The system that I'm working on right now is that the rightmost setter, or the one who's closest to zone 2, would take the least precedence and be the last one to play their secondary role, since they're closest to their base position already. So Gabby in this case would be playing as she already was. Evie would switch to her secondary role, which is the outside hitter. And then Matt will fill in with his secondary role, which is middle blocker. This is unfortunately going to be probably the most difficult part of the rotation, especially since we have so many members on our team. And so I'd really like to practice this on one of our nets, probably without any other teams, before we play a real game in the league. I'll be showing a simulation really quick. It won't be really proven though until we play it out. So for now, I'm going to use this rotation app I downloaded from the internet. It's a really neat app that allows us to simulate rotations. It's really neat, especially since it's still in beta, but the weird thing is that it doesn't really simulate off-court players very well. If you see here, we actually have off-court players on both sides of the court, and there doesn't seem the way I can play that. So what we're going to do is just kind of cover it up like so, and then pretend that this is the 6 players in the court. So it would simulate what we're seeing right here. So Jen, Michael, Cami, Gabe, myself, and Gabby. We also have 4 of our other teammates off to the side here. We're going to just go through 5 rotations. Keep an eye on Evie and Gabby right here. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So here we have 2 setters, of course, who are primarily setters. So in this situation, Gabby stays setter, Matt moves to his secondary, and then Evie moves to her secondary, which is outside. And what's nice about this is that we're all kind of already in our base positions here. Let's move over a couple more. 2 more rotations after that. Now you have the same situation again, where you have 2 people who are primarily setters, Evie and Carlene, on the front at the same time. Same thing here. So Taylor will stay actually as a middle here, and then Carlene will simply switch to her secondary position, which is outside hitter. 3 more rotations, and we're back where we started. And every time, I do believe we actually have simply 1 setter. This app won't let me actually choose who is who is primary and secondary in this case, so a little confusing, but just take my word for it, or run simulations on your own if you want. Just gonna go over these one at a time, and there you go. I hope this was helpful for everyone. It's kind of a lot. I can send some screenshots of this over as well. I know Jen also offered to do some printouts. I don't know if she has her own resources, but if she wants to use this one, and we're all in agreement here, that'd be super cool. But otherwise, thank you again so much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to just trying these out for our next season and really getting into the swing of using rotations. If we decide that 4-2 is not really our vibe, we can certainly try other ones. Anyway, thank you again. Have a great evening or day or whenever you watch this.